Okay, we are now live on Facebook. Thank you for your patience, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. I'll go ahead and call to order the September meeting of the Alexandria Transit Company Board of Directors. Thank you all for being here tonight. Hope everybody had a wonderful summer. We'll go ahead and do the welcome notice for the remote meeting, and then we'll go ahead and have the secretary call the roll.
Due to the COVID-19 pandemic emergency, this meeting of the Alexandria Transit Company Board of Directors is being held electronically pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3708.2 the Continuity of Government Ordinance, adopted by the Alexandria City Council on June 20, 2020, or Section 4-0.01G, in HB29 and HB30, as enacted by the 2020 Virginia General Assembly, Virginia Acts of Assembly Chapters 1283 and 1289, to undertake essential business. All members of the board and staff are participating from remote locations through a Zoom meeting. This meeting continues to be held electronically, unless a determination is made that it is safe enough to be held in person at the Alexandria Transit Company Boardroom, 3000 Business Center Drive, Alexandria, Virginia. Electronic access will be provided in either event. The meeting can be accessed live via Zoom and Facebook. Recordings are posted on YouTube and the Dash website. Public comment will be accepted via Zoom. A Zoom registration link is available on the Dash website. Alternatively, requests for public comment can be made during the public comment period by utilizing the raise hand feature. This meeting is being recorded.
Madam Clerk, go ahead and call the roll, please.
Jeff Kaplan.
Here.
You've been notified that Vice Chair Pete has joined us. Linda Bailey.
Here.
Mary Chambers. Randy Collins.
Present.
Ian Green.
Here.
Matt Harris.
Here.
Tim Texas. Hillary Orr.
Present.
Adjacent Thomas.
Present.
So we have
Thank you.
seven present, so we do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We will now turn to public comment. We start every dashboard meeting with an invitation from riders and other members of the community who wish to be heard. We may have community members who have signed up, and we will also query to see if there's anyone present on the call who did not sign up and would like to speak. Those who signed up will go first. The slide that is present now will kind of gives you the rules of the land. Members of the public who speak have 3 minutes to make comment. I'll ask staff at this time if anyone had signed up in advance.
Chair Kaplan, no one has been registered this week.
Thank you. So we'll pause for a minute and ask if anybody would like to be heard. They can do so by using the raise hand feature. We'll wait a minute. Has anyone identified themselves as wishing to speak?
Mr. Chair, I don't see anyone with their hands raised at this point.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead and close public comment. Move on to item 2, which is approval of the minutes of our June 9th meeting, which were included in our packet. Are there any corrections or revisions to the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt them.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the minutes from our June meeting.
Moved by Matt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Linda. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain. I was not present.
All right. Thank you, Hillary. That's noted. Minutes are adopted. We move on to item 3. We'll start with the report of the chair. And I made a list because there were a bunch of items to discuss. And I know Hillary and I were talking earlier, and she has a very robust report to share as well. So we'll try to move through these things expeditiously. First, I just wanted to follow up on an email I believe all of you saw at the beginning of July. I sent with some updates, one of which, and also to notify members of the public who are present, that Jeff Bennett of our board resigned his seat in July. Jeff also served on the Transportation Commission and stepped down from that board as well. We appreciate Jeff's service. He was in charge of the DC circulator, and I think brought a really important regional perspective to our board. Our board had stood at 11 because council had temporarily increased the number of seats by 2 so that we could improve underrepresentation from segments of the community. But it was the intention that that expansion be temporary. So we will not be recruiting to fill that seat. We will not recruit again until we get below 9 members. I had also mentioned over the summer that I wanted to work with staff to develop a condolence letter that could be sent to the families of DASH employees who die in service. This came after we had a bus operator who passed away over the summer, and so that letter has been drafted and has been approved and is in the files. And as Josh said to me, we hope that we very rarely have to take it out and use it. But I think it's very important that we as the board of directors stand with the families and those here at DASH who work with somebody who passes away, and that we have a way to offer our condolences and support to families during that time. Josh and I had a meeting over the summer with our counsel, Lonnie Rich, to discuss a variety of legal matters, including the discussion we'll have a little later on about how either the city or DASH would be a recipient potentially of FTA funds. So we'll hold that part of the discussion. One of the other matters I wanted to raise with the board is that we have a board procedure handbook that some of you may have been given a copy of when you joined the board and others not, depending on when you had your onboarding. It is probably something you have not looked at since you came on board because it is woefully out of date. It was updated, I believe, most recently in 2011. When it was created, it actually had a lot of different policies that govern the work of the company, including things like procurement and travel that really were more staff policies. But then because that was not a living, breathing document that anyone was looking at, it became sort of disentangled from all of the changes that were made to how DASH did its business. We want that to be a useful document that board members, new and old, can look at and kind of identify what is it that we do, how do we run meetings, what are our responsibilities. And so Josh is working with Lonnie to prepare updates to that handbook, and it will come to us probably this winter. We'll have a crosswalk between what's there now and what's being taken out. But I know we've done a lot of onboardings in the last year and a half of new board members, and so it really has called into the fact that that handbook just isn't really helping anybody do their business as a board member. So I'm very excited that that's a project that we're going to bring to fruition. Next update, Beth had sent an email to all of you last week asking for your feedback about how and under what circumstances we would be able to resume in-person meetings. We have been given guidance by the city clerk's office originally that we were to begin meeting in person this month. They have now allowed September meetings to go virtually, and so all boards and commissions continue to meet virtually this month because of concerns about the Delta variant. We don't know what October and beyond will hold. And so we are operating the assumption that at some point we're going to have to resume in-person meetings. It's important for us to understand your feedback as to, what are you most concerned about? What can we do to try to accommodate those concerns and ensure that everybody can meet here or in a hybrid format, depending on what ultimately is agreed upon, that will allow us to conduct our business and to be safe. So I want to thank Ian and Brandy for sending comments back to Beth. But invite the rest of you to, to please offer your comments. And we understand that that's going to change based upon just what is happening with Delta, and just as we as a society learn more about the science and how we respond. But we want to get a sense of where folks are because we just don't know when we're going to have to begin preparing to resume in-person. The other update that I have is something I have been thinking about for a while, and the update to the board manual procedures and the design of the new website kind of gave me a thought that it was time to kind of voice this and start working on this. You may notice that it no longer on the PowerPoint slide says chairman's report, it says chair's report. I have decided that we will no longer use gender pronouns in referring to the chair. So of this board, because I can simply be the chair and any future occupant as well. And so I've asked, so I'm announcing that at this meeting. I know that Beth has begun and Josh have begun to make some of those changes to documents, but there'll be a lot of other documents that can be updated. And my expectation is that just as we go and we see something that still refers to chairman, that will be updated, and we'll go with the gender neutral chair. I know the organization I work for, which is a commission that has a chair as well. There have been discussions about that as well. Apparently a little harder because it's a federal agency where there's legislation that actually refers to the head of that commission as the chairman. So, but we can do that very easily. That's all I have. We'll go on to Hillary's TNS report.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
before you move forward, in the order of these slides, I had the proclamation. Are you?
Oh, yes.
doing that
Yes,
now?
thank you. Yes, let's do that now. I knew I was going to forget something.
I'm certainly happy to introduce it. I would just say if Evan can activate his screen for the board. The chair has asked a proclamation to be prepared recognizing Evan. We are, this will be Evan's last board meeting with Dash. He has taken a new role in the city of Alexandria. So he is not getting very far away from us. He's getting closer to Hillary, but further from me. We're certainly very, very sad to see him go. But we're very excited for him with his opportunity. I always embrace staff pursuing any opportunity that furthers their career and challenges them in their advancement. So this is certainly one of those things, but I'll reflect more on that later. I'll just turn it over to the chairman or Mr. Chair to recognize the proclamation that he asked to be prepared.
Okay, I don't have, just the way my screen is formatted, I can't see everybody. So let me get to where I can see Evan. Oh, I just went past it. Okay, there you are. And I know, Evan, I have my door shut. I'm here at Dash. I have my door shut, and I know when my door's open, I can see you from the conference, or you see your office door from the conference room. So I know you're very close by. And Evan, I got to say a few words to you as we were going up in the elevator coming into this meeting, but you have been an outstanding member of the senior staff here at Dash. You are an officer of the corporation. You serve as the appointed treasurer. And we have relied on you so much through so many changes, the labor agreement and all of the different cost estimates, the WMATA shuttle service, and managing the grants that have come forward, managing the grants that have come through from NVTA for some of the service that we have. And you always have an answer. Your financial statements and reports are very clear to people like me who have very little understanding of accounting principles, but can follow along and can do budgetary oversight. So while I was very saddened when Josh told me that your decision to move to take a position with the city and the finance office, one, as a taxpayer, I was very glad to know that we are retaining someone who is very talented and is going to do a lot of good as a branch chief in that office. But also very glad to know that it's something that fits well with your career goals, and Dash is better off for having had you. So I asked Josh if we could go ahead and issue a proclamation to you to express our appreciation. And so I'm just going to go ahead and read it, and then my colleagues, we can all show our support. We'll vote to adopt it. So it says, Proclamation of Appreciation presented to Evan Davis. Whereas the Alexandria Transit Company Board of Directors on this 8th day of September 2021 have gathered to meet and wish to express recognition and appreciation to Evan Davis for his exemplary service. And whereas Evan has served admirably in his role as Director of Finance and Administration with Transit Management of Alexandria. And whereas Evan has simultaneously served admirably as the CFO for the Dash Board of Directors, working consistently for the betterment of the board, the transit system, and the communities it serves. And whereas the Dash Board of Directors wishes to express its sincere appreciation to Evan for his dedication to the outstanding performance of his duties during his tenure. And whereas this proclamation is presented to Evan to serve as a reminder that although he is leaving Dash, he will always be remembered as a valued employee dedicated to both his position and the community we serve. Now, therefore, I, David Kaplan, Chair of the Alexandria Transit Company, and on behalf of the Dash Board of Directors, do hereby present this proclamation to Evan Davis as a testimonial to the faithful and dedicated services for which he has performed for the past 3 years, with our best wishes for continued success and happiness in the future. So I will ask if there's a motion to adopt, and then Evan, I think we've perhaps put you on the spot here. I don't know whether you saw it in the board packet or not beforehand, but if you want to say a few words, or if you want to wait until your finance report and say something, then we'll be happy to enter. We'd love to hear from you. So I'll ask if there's a motion to adopt the proclamation.
So moved.
Moved by Larry,
Seconded.
second by Matt. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? So passes. So Evan, I will ask you can speak now, or if you want to speak with your finance report, we'd love to hear some parting remarks from you. But
Sure, Mr. Chair. I'll just thank you very much for your incredibly kind words. I feel Ian hearing this will now have very high expectations for me as I head over to the finance department. But it's just truly been a joy and a privilege to work for Dash. We do amazing stuff in the community. And I think everything that we've accomplished together is really more of a testament to my team and to the great partners we have in finance and OMB at the city that really together, it takes every single one of us to make it possible. And that's been particularly true this year with the federal funding that we've gotten and support through FEMA grants and things like that. All of our partners over at the city have made it possible for Dash to get through this year and not lose a single position and not reduce service except to protect the public. So I just really express my appreciation to everybody and to the board and to you for your very kind words.
we will get to hear one. You're very welcome, and we'll get to hear one last financial report from you. But again, we really appreciate the outstanding job that you've done, and wish you well. All right, we'll turn this over to Hillary.
Hey, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for allowing me a short absence. I guess it was kind of long. It's been a while. I was planning to attend the February meeting, and then it didn't happen. But I appreciate the work that Chris Zeman, Division Chief of Transportation Planning, and Jen Schlesinger did to keep you all informed on the city side while I was out. Just to add on, we are very excited to have Evan over at the city, but man, we really appreciate the work that he does with Dash. I mean, send him an email and you get a response immediately, and it's so thorough and helpful. You definitely have some big shoes to fill over there, Josh. So we are looking forward to having him on the city side now. Okay, so I will dive right into my report, and please feel free to stop me or jump in if you have any questions. But I'm just going to start with the Duke Street in Motion project. This, as you all know, is the Duke Street Bus Rapid Transit project. The project has started out with a visioning phase. So we did a lot of community outreach this spring to really try and understand from the community what their vision for the corridor is. And that will help us then determine what the corridor looks like, how we improve transit, and what the goals are for the community. So that process, we got a lot of feedback. We got 1,800 comments back from that. So we're still processing all of that information, and we'll have a summary report out hopefully early this month with that feedback and kind of what the next steps are. I mean, the next steps are to develop a goals and a vision statement, but looking at the timing of the project and how some of the feedback might impact that will be coming out pretty soon. The next item is the King Street Station bus loop. This project, which has been under construction for quite a while. We did start service to some of the permanent bus bay locations in Old Town at the King Street Metro Station on September 5th. And this included stops for the new Dash routes that were launched as part of the new Dash network. There's also some additional bus stops, permanent locations for Metro Access and DOT paratransit service. And then we will be opening the new Kiss and Ride lot and taxi and car share and shuttle zones, as well as some additional crosswalk improvements. Those will be completed later this fall, but the first phase did include some of the permanent bus bays in the metro station. Okay, next, Dockless Mobility, we had an ad hoc scooter task force meeting in August, and the task force voted to approve, or basically voted to recommend to City Council that we should have a permanent scooter program, a Dockless Mobility program. And they also proposed a set of changes to incorporate into the future program. So some of the areas of concern that were addressed were about improper parking, improving safety, complaint management, and then managing deployment of scooters. But this will likely go to council in November for their approval of a permanent program. WMATA service and fare changes. Metro did make some changes to make riding easier and more convenient. So again, beginning September 5th, September 5th was a big day for transit all around. But they added more buses and trains, and they did change their pricing structure. So there's a 7-day bus pass that is at a reduced rate now of $12, and weekend fares will be at $2. So in Alexandria, there were some routes that were changed to align with the transit vision plan. And then we had some other peak hour service that is returning. And then we did also modify some of the routes, the 8Z and 21A and 11Y. Next, we have the Potomac Yard Metro Rail Station. So you all probably heard the news in July that Metro actually announced a delay of at least 5 months to the completion of the construction of the Metro station. So the station was originally expected to open in April 2022, but it's now looking like it's going to be in the fall of 2022. And that was based on design of the automatic train control system, which really is a major safety component. So, the city is trying to work with WMATA to reduce delays even more, and kind of push them to make sure that they are maintaining as much of the existing schedule as possible. But one element of this is that the yellow line has been planned to be shut down around the same time because of the rehabilitation of the bridge. I believe there's a lot of shutdowns. I'm trying to keep them all straight. So that's unfortunate that likely when the Metro station opens, the yellow line would not be running. So not great timing, not great news, but the city is working with WMATA on that. Next, we have legislative input. So now is the time for this board to provide any input on our legislative priorities for 2022. There's a pretty extensive form that we fill out, and it's really looking to, asking about the type of problems that we're trying to solve with the legislative ask. So I don't know if the board has anything that they want to discuss. We could certainly do that now. But I don't know, Mr. Chair, if you had any particular legislative items you want to bring up, and it's completely fine if the board does not have anything to put forward this year.
And Hillary, thank you. You and I had a chance to talk briefly about this earlier today, and I, mentioned that I know Josh and some members of the board may not be familiar with the Virginia Transit Association, which is sort of the lobbying arm for transit systems here within the state, and they have a very robust presence in Richmond during the legislative session. And so I know, Hillary, you mentioned that you had spoken with Josh earlier and had indicated, if there were any VTA priorities that we wanted to include, and that there really weren't any, but I'll ask Josh if maybe he just wants to say just a few words about what VTA is and sort of your role and sort of things that they may be advocating for in the upcoming session.
Sure, Mr. Chair. There really isn't a lot going on in this particular session, largely because there's been so much transit activity in the past couple of years, and there's been so much money put into and investments put into the services. But Virginia Transit Association is one of 2 state associations for transportation that I serve on. I am the secretary for VTA, and Mayor Wilson is the president of VTA currently. So we have 2 executive committee representatives on the VTA board. And it is, as you mentioned, one of the 2 state associations that works to advocate for transit and support transit systems. VTA tends to be more legislative in nature, whereas the Community Transportation Association, which is the other one, which I serve now as vice president of, is more technical assistance and training focused. But both are very valuable and appreciated organizations, and we are involved in them. So we continue to work with them to monitor anything that we need to address.
Hillary, you had indicated, I think there was a very fast turnaround. If there were priorities that our board wanted to consider, I think you said October 1 is when the form has to be submitted. And the Transportation Commission, I know Larry, you serve on that, and maybe, I don't know if you've had your meeting yet this month, is also going to be discussing that this month as well.
I think that'll be on the docket, but we haven't had the discussion yet.
Okay.
Okay, so I had one last thing that was came in a little bit late, so it's not in the board packet. But I did want to bring up that the city budget guidance request from boards and commissions is going to be due November 5th. So that does give us some time in the October meeting to discuss budget priorities for the board. But just so we can be thinking about it, the city manager sent a letter, and we are continuing the FY23 themes of smart, equitable, and green. So those, I think, a lot of the things that Dash is working toward fall nicely within those categories in terms of, fare-free service, the electrification of the fleet, and advancing the ATV recommendations, and particularly in areas of equity and need. So I think, there's a couple priorities for the board might want to discuss, and we can do that, and then have some letter from the board that we can vote on in October.
Yeah, thank you, Hillary, and for sharing that. And I also talked about that as well, and how we might tackle that. And so what we have done in the past is we have the board has sent a letter to the city manager, because we certainly want to be a part of this process very early, and to be involved in advocating for the things that are important to us. And the one that and you've articulated some things that we need to consider: accelerating electrification, increasing investment of transit in areas of where of high need, and as an equity measure. And the thing that the most comes to my mind is the portions of the ATV that remain unfunded, particularly the increases in the Duke Street service, which were sort of when council allocated extra money, that was an alternative, but say to going fare free, but it's still something that we to complete that project is something that does need to be funded by them. So I would say that that's probably going to be our primary ask. And so I would ask if staff would go ahead and draft a letter, and certainly if there are other things related to state of good repair or the facility. I know there are some improvements to the facility that have been funded as a result of the expansion of service, but there are other things related to some of the earlier flood mitigation and other infrastructure we've talked about that we need to be aware of. Let's get a proposal in front of the board for a letter and put it on the October agenda.
Great, thanks. That was all I had.
Thanks. So I'll recognize Jen Schlesinger.
Hi, thanks so much for having me today. I'm Jen Schlesinger, the project manager for the Alexandria Mobility Plan. I also want to thank Larry Chambers of your board, who's been supporting the Alexandria Mobility Plan Advisory Committee, and also Linda Bailey, who actually presented It was on our panel at the first event for the Alexandria Mobility Plan almost 2 years ago, our innovation forum. So thank you for your participation. The last time I think we received an update on the Alexandria Mobility Plan was by Christopher Zeman back in April when we released the draft plan. So I'm here today as we posted the updated version on the updated plan on our website, and we're seeking endorsement, this board's endorsement for council adoption in the fall. So before I get into my presentation, and I'll try to go through it quickly because you've seen some of it before, but I do want to highlight the transit changes that we've made, and the other changes that we've made since the last presentation. But we have a brief overview video that talks about the outcomes of the mobility plan. So if we can try to click on that and play that.
Give me just a second, Jen. I'll see
Sure. If it doesn't work,
Alexandria,
great.
a city on the move.
We're not
We are
seeing
a
it.
Historic, vibrant.
We're hearing it.
I can hear it.
There's a cute little animation that goes with it. At some point we'll get the technology right.
Almost there.
Sure.
All right, can you see it now?
It's loading, and it looks like that there might be a
Alexandria,
screen over the
a
left side.
city on the move. We are a historic, vibrant, and growing community with diverse mobility needs. Alexandria needs
Most of it.
Is it working? No?
Yeah, the left side of the screen has a big rectangle over it if you have another screen open.
Oh,
But you can see most of it if you want to keep going.
I'm sorry. Give me one more second and I'll get it for you. One more chance here.
In the meantime, I can just say that talk through the next couple slides, but there are a variety of inputs into the plan. But for the transit section, we relied heavily on existing plans and policies, the Alexandria Transit Vision Plan, and the original Transportation Master Plan that talks about the 3 transit ways. So that was a big factor that went into this effort.
All right, I think I've got it here.
Great.
Let me just one last shot for you. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
All right, hopefully you can hear it.
Alexandria, a city on the move. We are a historic, vibrant, and growing community with diverse mobility needs. Alexandria needs safe, seamless, and connected mobility choices to help manage congestion, improve public transit, and enable each and every resident to thrive. The core of the Alexandria Mobility Plan is about giving you better choices for how you get around. The plan's vision and guiding principles seek to expand your choices by improving transportation access. The Alexandria Mobility Plan's policies and strategies will guide decision-making that will enable safe and efficient travel, whether you choose to drive, ride, walk, or bike. The plan will make it easier to take transit by creating better connections and improving the rider experience. Pedestrians and cyclists will enjoy safer, more connected infrastructure. Drivers will benefit from reduced congestion and cut-through traffic, improved parking, and smarter traffic signals. Not all Alexandrians start out with the same needs. Through implementation, we will work across the community to ensure equitable outcomes for all ages, abilities, races, and incomes. The Alexandria Mobility Plan will guide Alexandria's transportation investments, supporting equitable, data-driven decision-making, promoting flexibility to adapt to new challenges, climate change, and other societal changes, encouraging regional partnerships, and help to secure funding to advance existing and new projects. This plan will form a foundation to foster continued community collaboration, monitor future mobility progress, and keep our city moving. To learn more about the Alexandria Mobility Plan, visit alexandriava.gov/mobilityplan.
Thanks, Josh. So that just provided an overview of our vision, guiding principles, and overview policies. Go to the next slide. You can go to the next, yeah. And then we did a robust outreach process. We on the draft plan, we did we released a feedback form and went to a variety of venues, virtually and in person, to get people to become aware of the plan if they weren't already, and to provide feedback. So based off the feedback, we made some updates, although we generally received pretty positive feedback supporting the elements of the plan. Next slide. So the transit section, I think these are the same policies verbatim is what we had initially, and these really speak to the Alexandria Transit Vision Plan policies of our goals of making transit more useful. We also added greener in there as well, and making it easier to use and reducing barriers to transportation, to transit. Next slide. The strategies, well, I think there's one extra strategy. It was more of a semantic change to separate out a few of the first the first strategy was a lot of different things. So we broke that out to implementing the Alexandria Transit Vision. And in the first one, the priority corridors and improving reliability and travel times more generally in the second one. And then making the bus fleet electric in the third strategy. But the rest of the strategies remain largely the same, although we did update strategy 5 about making paying for transit easier and more equitable to reflect the free fares, and just making sure that we're tracking free fares and looking at low-income impacts of fare policy more generally, including with Moda going forward. Next slide. One of the changes that we did make to this chapter was adding a few additional metrics. I think it's correct that the last two we didn't have in the initial plan, and in our implementation chapter now we include baseline measures as well as targets for a lot of these different metrics. So these will be tracking progress on our strategies every year, and updating the metrics more formally, and presenting that to the Transportation Commission every 3 years. Next slide. And just some general changes from the draft plan. We have a new strategy focused on maintaining our roadways, electric vehicle usage. We did include the adopted pedestrian and bicycle networks from the 2016 plan, as well as the 2030 Alexandria Transit Vision Plan. And the 3 priority transit corridors are now included in the plan document. We provide more emphasis on traffic management strategies, just making a more central location for folks to find those, and do recognize that we need to plan proactively for autonomous vehicles, so that that's a longer term strategy. Next slide. And I highlighted some of the changes to the metrics with the transit chapter, and I talked through a lot of this. But yeah, we added a lot of information in our implementation, or we added an implementation appendix, so you can see near, medium, and long-term strategies and what our targets are. So that provides some more grounding to the plan. Next slide. This just talks about next steps. We're seeking endorsement. We're doing the rounds this month for boards and commissions. We'll be going to Planning Commission early next month with city council hearing on the 16th. And then for an update to the city's master plan, we'll go back in November with the ordinance reading and public hearing. And just to emphasize, this is an ongoing process. We'll be doing continued community engagement as we do implementation and identify funding and implement our strategies. Next slide. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but just again, we're here to seek your endorsement of the plan. And I should also note that the full plan is included on our website, along with an executive summary and other materials, including the video.
Thank you, Jen. I have a question for you, and board members, just to know, we have a draft of a letter in our packet, and I see Ian has his hand raised as well, so I'll recognize you after I speak. The Commission on Aging, I know, is one of the groups you have been to, at least the executive committee recently, and I serve on that commission as well. And so I didn't hear that presentation, but I had spoken with our transportation committee chair, who I know had some concerns about the specificity of the plan as it dealt with the aging community, although certainly in seeing some of the metrics, I don't know if those were recent changes. There do seem to be some that are specifically looking at seniors in terms of accessibility to transit and paratransit, serving them. And what I gathered from them is they felt that the plan maybe didn't speak enough to the concerns of the aging community. So I was wondering, in terms of that feedback you got a couple of weeks ago, if there were changes that are being pondered to the plan, or ways specifically in terms of how the plan will be tracked or future follow-up will occur that will address some of those.
Sure. So we heard that feedback initially. I didn't hear any major concern or any concerns at the executive committee meeting, but we did add those accessibility metrics. We also for a lot of we have a lot of resident survey information metrics in our plan that look at percent of residents who have a positive view of walking in the city, for example, and we are breaking that out now by seniors, income, and minority populations. So we'll be able to keep an eye on how we're doing in relation to those perspectives, and help us adapt if we need to as we move forward. But I do think we have a lot of elements in the plan, and I did try to highlight them a little bit more at the meeting of just improving pedestrian access. We heard a lot about concerns about pedestrian or sidewalk maintenance, and that's definitely in our pedestrian chapter to make sure that we stay on top of maintenance for accessibility reasons and safety reasons as well. We're also doing improving or streamlining our paratransit program. The intersection between transit and aging in particular, as we're going to see a growing aging population. We hope to have a more cost-effective and customer service-oriented paratransit system, so that's in here as well. So we did try to respond in the updated plan to the comments we heard during the draft, and I didn't hear anything specific at the Committee on Aging meeting. But
I know I serve on the Transportation Committee for that commission. I know our chair wanted us to have a further discussion about it, but in talking with our committee chair, I know those were things that he had in his mind that he wanted us to consider, that commission to consider in terms of its endorsement. But I think what you've shared with me today is very, very helpful going into that discussion.
Thank you, and I'm happy to talk to you guys more as well.
Okay, great. I'll pass that along and go ahead and recognize Ian.
Hi, can you go back like 4 slides? It's the one where you listed what we want to address. I think it's the next one, that one. Yeah, I couldn't remember if any of these strategies included extensive planning. I remember a couple of years back, one of the residents mentioned, okay, it's fine that we see what the routes are, but what can we get along those routes? Like, how can someone plan, if they can access a particular business or facility that they need to go to? Does this plan interactively show that sort of information, and will it be updated?
A little trouble hearing you there. I think you were asking, do we have specific improvements to improve customer access to transit?
Just to expand, something that shows what businesses that's along the way of the routes, so that when someone is planning in their travel, does the network show that information, or does it just show the routes and the stops?
I see what you're saying. So to sort of advertise, promote that there's these transit accessible businesses on the corridor, so people are aware that they have access to them.
And that information shows the usefulness of the network, as opposed to just a network.
Sure. No, that's an interesting point. I don't think we addressed that explicitly, but we are looking at like accessibility to jobs and seeing and tracking how I think that's one of our metrics, to see how the transit network is improving accessibility to major destinations and jobs. So we will be tracking generally how useful it is in that respect. If that answers your question a little bit.
It helps. Thank you.
Thanks.
Brandy?
Thank you, Chair, for recognizing me. I want to commend staff on this presentation and also on the plan. I work for the Office of Housing, so I'm always looking at things through a housing and equity lens. And as you all know, so many households and so many families in Alexandria struggle with providing safe and stable housing for their families. And transit is one of those other critical needs that falls in the same bucket. So providing safe, accessible, low cost, and in this case, free transit for Alexandrians is really important. So I really commend you all on having that lens and that metric of examining the equity of the routes and also promoting the free fare and also looking at the mode share so that folks are able to get to work and have those transportation options, which are so critical for our families.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Jim.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I guess two questions and related to the plan itself. I'm just curious, if you don't have the detailed insight, it's fine, but two different topics that you outlined. One, as it relates to electric vehicle charging and access in the city, I think what's described in the plan as developing mobility hubs that would include a range of different transportation options, including options that would require charging. I'd just be interested to sort of hear more about how that's being envisioned and also collaboration, sort of what kind of collaborations envisioned with Dash. So that's one. And then two, there was a reference to the sort of autonomous vehicles in there as well, and sort of preparing for autonomous vehicles, and particularly focused on ensuring that those vehicles would meet the sort of the policy objectives of the city, shareable vehicles, reduction in, doesn't increase VMT overall, et cetera. And just also would love to hear more about how you're thinking about how the plan envisions, I guess, different kinds of new policies being put in place or pilots, and again, the role of Dash in that, or collaborating sort of Dash with whatever the AV related strategy might be for the city.
Sure, thank you. Those are good questions. So with electric vehicle charging, we initially had a strategy that still exists with the mobility hubs and incorporating electric vehicle charging infrastructure in there. And then we have an additional strategy now focused just on expanding electric vehicle charging within the city. And both of those are tied to the electric, I always get this name wrong, but the electric vehicle charging readiness strategy study that was just completed. So those are recommendations that came out of that effort. So we're looking at opportunities to design, one, mobility hubs likely at transit stations, and some of these exist in certain forms now, but maybe creating more of a placemaking element around it and incorporating charging infrastructure that can maybe help with dockless mobility as well. And if they're at bus stations, with depending on how Dash expands its electric vehicle fleet, we would definitely consider opportunities to see if there's synergies there. But we will work closely in implementation, particularly because the mobility hubs will be around transit, to see how we can optimize the electrical vehicle charging for all parties who need it. And then your second question was about, I'm sorry, lost my train of thought.
AVs, sorry.
I'm sorry, AVs, yes. So this was a strategy that was initially in the draft strategies that went out before the draft plan. And we actually took it out during the draft, but we heard feedback from the Alexandria Mobility Plan Advisory Committee in particular that it's a 10-year plan horizon. We need to make sure that we're thinking long-term about autonomous vehicles from a, as you mentioned, like a shared vehicle perspective, make sure that autonomous vehicles won't add to VMT in the city. So we haven't, this is going to be more of a longer term thinking with the city. We're not thinking in the immediate term about pilots at this stage, but just making sure that that's on our radar and that we're thinking proactively is what this strategy is about, to make sure that as autonomous vehicles may get introduced in Alexandria, that we are considering policies to move that forward. So it's still in the conceptual phase. As we work towards plan implementation, we'll sort of make that more concrete as we plan towards timeline for developing the policies, et cetera.
Got it. Thank you. I think it is important to include that in there for what it's worth, just because there's a certain degree of inevitability of some of this technology emerging, and we better have a policy framework and plan to absorb it into the community in the way that we want it to, to actually manifest, and not just sort of arrive and then not know how to deal with it when it's too late.
Appreciate that. And the whole framework of the mobility plan is about expanding choices, but doing so in a way that provides options and conscious of single occupancy vehicle use. So it all fits within the general framework.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Actually, this is for Jim. Jim, since we're just having this
hydrogen.
No, I'm past
kidding.
that.
Inside joke.
My stocks are all down. Jim, you mentioned electrical vehicle charging stations in Dash, and I mean, I respect your knowledge in this field. What type of connection are you envisioning, or what do you think is ideal? Because these are concepts that I think we need to explore now rather than later.
Well, I was mostly bringing in Dash just because of given where we're sitting, like how it's being coordinated. I mean, as far as I understand from Josh and from the Dash team, that our charging infrastructure is going to basically be at the depot for the foreseeable future. And I don't think it's clear that we don't have a clear plan, Josh can correct me if I'm wrong, to actually deploy charging infrastructure sort of out in the city per se. Although I know it's possible down the road, we may want to do something like that, so you can charge vehicles right en route. But my question, really the core of it was around understanding the mobility hubs, because having places where people can actually charge their vehicles that are mobility transit points, which might be near a metro or a bus station or whatever it might be. I was just curious how the plan was kind of envisioning how those might come to pass, and then the role that Dash might play or in time coordinating around that. So that'd be for probably private vehicles, personally owned vehicles, as well as shared vehicles, maybe not just cars, but also plug-in scooters and other types of devices used for mobility.
Okay, and then Jen, my question is, and this is sort of not Dash related as much as it's people who live in townhomes who have small private parking lots. Is there a best practices to set up charging stations? It's an infrastructure investment for the HOAs that many may not see the value down the road, but when they go to sell and people with electric cars don't want to buy those houses, it's absolutely a smart investment. I wonder, does the city have anything published on that that's accessible?
I think the electric vehicle charging infrastructure strategy speaks to that a little bit. At least it's honestly not my area of expertise, but that looked at public options for charging infrastructure, but also I think looked at the impacts of private. And I'm just getting a note here. And they are working to publish an EV installation checklist for private property. So that is definitely something that we're working on.
Super, thank you.
Thanks.
Like Bill Egger, that Matt, that you could talk to, who would have all the answers on the city side, I expect, although maybe Martin's going to say that with his raised hand, or someone else.
Go ahead, Martin.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. I was just going to add one comment to the previous question about the electric charging stations. Dash and myself and others are involved with the site planning process for several major developments, such as Landmark Mall and Potomac Yard. And we are ensuring that we have, we're not precluding ourselves from having electric charging stations at places like that. So we're involved in the site plan process. We're working with developers to kind of get our foot in the door. We still need to identify funding for those charging stations. But at places like that makes sense from an operational standpoint, we are, thinking ahead and trying to make sure that we're prepared to get that down the road.
Oh, that's good, Martin. So would that be include negotiating with developers and Dominion on making sure there's the appropriate electrical hosted capacity on those sites?
Yes, we're working with the city and their energy manager to make sure that we get that, some of those conditions built in.
Smart, I like it.
And I do, I was remiss in not recognizing Martin and his help for helping with the transit chapter. We worked very closely with him and his team to put this together. Sorry, I should have mentioned you along with the board members, but thank you, Martin.
No problem at all. I just want to say this plan goes really well with what we're trying to do with the ATV. The ATV is mostly about service, but the service is not very useful if there's not the supporting infrastructure and prioritization and customer aspects that go along with the service. So the AMP is really important for those aspects. So thank you, Jen. Did a great job.
We have a draft letter to go to City Council endorsing the plan, particularly the transit chapters, and I believe it is an accurate and fair letter, and excited about what this plan will bring. So I'll ask if there's any further discussion, or if anyone would like to put a motion on the table to adopt the letter.
I move to adopt the letter to City Council.
Moved by Matt. Is there a second?
A second.
Jim? Any further discussion? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And before we move on to the general manager, we always like to ask our other board members to check in on other folks who serve in boards, commissions, and other organizations. If there's any work related to transit or Dash or things we should be aware of, this would be your time. I see Matt has his hand raised.
Unfortunately, I was reappointed as chair of the Human Rights Commission for, I think, the 8th year. But I would love to see Jen and her team come to either our executive board meeting or our general monthly meeting sometime and discuss transit, especially as it relates to equity. We deal a lot with the new equity officer that the city hired a year ago, March. Time flies. And we would love to see it under transit as well. So thank you.
I'd be happy to. I can follow up with you later. You can send me an email.
Any other board announcements? All right, we'll go ahead and turn this over to Josh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, members of the board. It's good to see you after a summer recess. This is an interesting board report for me because I am going to share with you that I am under the weather right now, and that is because I was fortunate enough to contract COVID. And this is an experience that I'm sharing openly with you and with all the staff because I feel like it's an important thing to do. So if I'm a little stuffy and slow and fuzzy in my speech, please forgive me. I am on the upswing, I think, which is good, but it has been an interesting ride. I have always been a great advocate for the vaccine and its effectiveness, and I'm seeing that in my case. It's unfortunate that I have a breakthrough case, but I also got an opportunity to experience what the health departments are doing as far as their follow-up when they have an exposure in a case like this. It took 2 hours on the phone today. It was quite thorough. Despite following what I felt like were the appropriate precautions and only spending time around individuals who are fully vaccinated, this still managed to happen. So it's very real, still a very real threat. But I just want to say to all of you and to anyone who's watching, the vaccines have been working, and it's working for me. It is not a pleasant experience by any stretch, but everything that they say is going to happen in a vaccinated case has been happening with me. And the most important one is that I am not getting worse and I am not ending up in the hospital. So 3 cheers for science and for all of the work of our public health officials. So with that said, I will start out in talking about COVID and the vaccination process and what we're doing at DASH. Obviously, it's been quite some time since we all talked, and there's been a lot going on throughout the summer. I'm going to focus on what we're doing within the workforce as it relates to vaccinations, because it's still very much the fact that vaccines are what saves lives, and they are what are helping, even though the virus is quite transmittable still and still circulating around and getting through, as is the case with me. Those who are vaccinated, it is still protecting us from severe illness. So with that said, we have been able to come to an agreement with our union representatives, and in line with what else has been happening regionally, both within the city of Alexandria and throughout the transit industry, most particularly in the DC metropolitan area. And we're going to be moving to a vaccination requirement within the workforce. The vaccination requirement will be such that if you are unwilling or unable for a particular stated reason or non-stated reason to receive the vaccine, you will be subject to a screening, testing requirement, which will be frequent and quite frankly, intensive. It's going to be a weekly test with results required prior to being permitted to work with workers who fail to meet the various requirements, being denied work until they comply. Hopefully this will not be the problem, but any individuals failing to comply would ultimately be subject to disciplinary action in accordance with this policy. So that's the high level of that. I see Jim has his hand raised. I welcome your question.
Josh, first of all, thanks for sharing your own circumstance, and super sorry that you got COVID, happy that you got vaccinated and that it seems to be working. And I guess thanks for coming tonight, although I'm not sure I feel a little uneasy on the fact that you are ill in here, but
I have a lot of water.
You have a lot of hydration.
I am hydrating the entire meeting, so I'm good. Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure I understood maybe more clearly what's on the slide and what you just said. Is it the case, I can't tell here exactly, that that when you say 52% of the workforce have self-reported as fully vaccinated, does that mean they have provided evidence of their vaccination, or they have provided evidence of vaccination? Okay.
Yeah, right. Because we can't obtain the vaccination information directly, we
Sure.
rely on the employee to submit that.
Okay, perfect. And can you give a little bit more context? Maybe it's because it's still being under development, because it says the policy will establish. How are you currently thinking the waiver will work? I would, I guess from my perspective, hope that it is a relatively narrowly defined exemption, given that weekly testing is still very much suboptimal.
Correct, and I agree. This was one of the areas that, because this is a change in employment, the current terms and conditions of employment, we worked with the union to try to establish what would be an acceptable in their view, although understanding that ultimately as the employer, we have the right to set policy. It is still an issue if such policies are not essentially jointly negotiated or agreed upon, at least in the sense of having that conversation. And we wanted to make sure we had that. I would say that what this is saying is that we want you to provide a reason. The problem is that restricting the reasons was a concern that was raised to us in that negotiation process, specifically because of the implications it might have on individuals who may have aversion to vaccinations and the history of vaccines and how they've been handled in the past in this country. But to answer your question succinctly, they can simply decline to provide the reason and choose to go the route of testing at this time. While we would like to see that more restrictive, we're going to give this a try to start and see where we get. And if we find that that doesn't move the needle at all, then we're going to go ahead and have to take an even more severe approach. But we're really hoping that the inconvenience and quite frankly, the time that they're going to have to commit personally to the testing process would dissuade people from choosing that avenue.
Can I ask another hands up? Thanks for sharing that context. Have you agreed on any goals with the union jointly that they will assist with in sort of, for example, increasing the overall rate to a certain percentage by a certain time? Mike, because I would say, Mike, well, actually, let me ask that before I say anything more.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. And frankly, I'd like to see 100%. I think we all would. All along, we've been looking to try to get to 70 to 80%, which has sort of been the mark. There's no written agreement related to that, but it was discussed. And I feel quite confident that the union is very supportive of this and behind us in this. And I really appreciate the conversation that we did have. It was a conversation really about how to navigate the hopefully very select few that are outside of what we expect to hear. But my goal is to see us hit that 80%, as a measure, but that wasn't something we agreed to in writing.
I'll just state maybe a view and then I'll let others talk. Matt has his hand up. Appreciate you trying to work, with the union on an agreement. I think it is important to collaborate and try to get to sort of a joint approach that sort of makes sense to help make the workforce safer and therefore the public safer. I would encourage you as a follow-on with the union team to see whether you might set some parameters and goals in terms of time and outcome, after which you would revisit with them the policy that has been designed here. I am concerned that it is, a bit too open-ended in terms of what folks, under what justifications people cannot get the vaccine. And now that the FDA has approved at least Pfizer, there really aren't very many reasons why someone shouldn't get the vaccine. And as we've heard from Anthony Fauci, to keep us all safe ultimately from mutant variations and everything else, it's all about getting people vaccinated, and the time to sort of dilly-dally and make people feel good about bad information they're getting and boogeymen and all these other things that may be real in people's minds, but are just not helping the situation, I think should be coming to a close. So again, I would just encourage you, I know you're doing everything you can to sort of also create a good relationship with the union. I know they want to keep people safe, but I would try to create some real clear parameters and goals, and then say, if we don't hit 80% by X date, we're going to ratchet things. We're going to reevaluate the policy at that time, as opposed to just being like, we're going to see how it goes.
I very much appreciate you providing those comments, and I agree with you. And that's definitely something that I'll jump into here. Especially now being someone who has caught something that should be gone by now. You know, we all, if everyone had gotten vaccinated, we wouldn't still be where we are. So thank you for your comments. Yeah, and I'll definitely follow up on that, Jim. Yes, Matt.
Yeah, Josh, and I echo the sentiments. I'm glad you're on the road to recovery and happy that you've been vaccinated. You know, I too also think that this is a very liberal policy. I would say if you don't have a medical exemption or religious exemption, you get your shot, period. I would negotiate with the union to impasse and then just implement, because you have the upper hand at all times. That said, how much is dictated by the reality of a driver shortage? That's one of the issues I've been facing constantly, and it's pretty much a delicate task. But with that said, if I were the union, I mean, they'd be ridiculous to want to expose their fellow workers to a deadly disease. One death, the death that you had in June or July, that was completely senseless. It should not have happened. And I'm happy to look over your policies or even draft proposals. I mean, I've been doing this with our own unionized workforce as well as representing union workers throughout the country. So
thank you for your support. I really appreciate it very much.
But is the driver shortage a factor?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, to answer your question, it certainly is. I would be clear and candid that it is not something that we're going to allow to have us turn the dial back on this. You know, safety is a priority here. And, you know, if there's a day where we have to sit down and I have to say, you know what, we're going to have to dial back our service a little bit because we're just simply not making the staffing requirements, which in turn affects the ability to meet pull-out requirements, I'm going to be very open and honest about that. But I don't want that to be something that scares us from our resolve to helping participate in solving this issue. And I really am very optimistic that it won't. We have a great team and a great set of drivers who are very interested in working and meeting the policies of our organization. You know, it is frustrating that more are not vaccinated. But you know, the details and story are different with every individual. But I will certainly keep you all posted as we move along and see how this moves the needle and set some parameters, as Jim has mentioned. Yes, Brandy. Sorry, Brandy.
Hey,
Yeah.
John. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I just want to make a comment on the percentage that 52% of the workforce has self-reported as fully vaccinated, and just offer another perspective. Maybe a higher percentage of the workforce is vaccinated, but they just haven't provided that information. The city had a similar survey where it asked staff to self-report whether or not they've been vaccinated, and only 50% of the city staff responded to that survey. And I'm sure there are many more, or a higher percentage of staff that are actually vaccinated, but folks don't always respond and provide that information until they're forced to do that. So the number may actually be higher, hopefully, for your staff as well, as I'm sure it is for the city staff.
Thank you. Yes, we're hoping the same. Yeah, thank you. Yes, Ian.
Hi, quickly, I share the sentiments of everyone for the well wishes for you, as well as all of the sentiments for the operational changes examining the policy. I just want to reiterate, we should pay attention to the other protected classes, such as religion. It's not just the medical issue. I know you are faced with the religion, the religious issue as well. So just when you revise your policy, just remember to examine every area such as that.
Well, certainly. Yeah, thank you. And you know, I always look for the silver lining of anything. I never wanted to get sick, but now that I have gotten sick, I'm going to use it as an opportunity to tell my story within the workforce, and help to further maybe encourage people to understand both my experience with the vaccine and getting sick with the vaccine, and how it was and how it felt and those kinds of things. So we're going to do everything we can and continue to move forward. But it's time for this, and we're hopeful that this is going to make a big change because it's time to get this resolved. So thank you all for your comments. We'll certainly put those into play, and we'll be working through those with the team, and hopefully have some good reports back to you here soon on some progress on this. The second item here actually predates a number of you that may be on the board at this point. There was a strategic retreat done. I can't quite remember the year. I think it was 2018, but it was certainly right after I got to Dash. David, you may remember better, but somewhere around 2017, 2018, the board got together. Yeah, great, thank you. The board got together, and one of the things that came out of that discussion was it would be very nice to have a mission and vision statement that was something that was generated by the workforce to help understand what the goals of our organization are and what we should always be striving towards. I'm bringing this to you today. It took a while to put together, largely because we wanted to form a committee and then work within the organization to get feedback from the workforce before bringing it to you. And then, of course, after they hired me here and said, it's a great job, you're going to have a lot of fun, and then all of a sudden everything came hitting me left and right, starting with the summer shutdown and who knows what else. We just got very busy, and that's okay, but this became sidelined. So the team worked together to put this together, and there's more detail provided in your packet. And I want to thank the individuals that did work on it within the organization. I'm going to quickly scroll them so I don't forget them. But the vision here is, or the view here with this mission and vision statement are that they will be guiding principles for the organization. They will be public facing and internal facing to help make sure that everything we're doing is aligning with them. I'm bringing to you for comment. I certainly welcome if you find something about them particularly problematic that you don't agree with, or something is very specifically missing from them, so that I can take it back to the group and get it finalized. Certainly welcome any of your input on them. But I will say that when they were done, the group that worked on them seemed to spend quite a bit of time trying to figure out a way to really reflect who we are. And I'll just recognize them and then open up for any comments. The committee was comprised of the following staff: Stephanie Salzone, Tristan Cunningham, Evan Davis, Naeem Mahfouz, Whitney Code, and Swinda Karkamo, who then worked with the rest of the organization to solicit feedback from the workforce, compile that, and to establish the presented mission and vision statements. Once these are put into place, the team and the workforce wants to see an established set of guiding principles that we work by, and they would probably be more granular in their approach to exactly how we achieve this mission and adhere to our vision. So I'll pause there and just ask if there are any comments.
I want to commend the committee for the work that they did. I think this is a very good mission statement and vision statement, and not only to motivate the workforce, and we talked about driver shortage, and I know Evan's report mentions that we're going to be getting someone to help with recruitment. So it's certainly very helpful to have statements like this to assist with that. We had talked a little bit over the phone in preparation of the board meeting about, as we're developing guiding principles, also being then involving the new rider advisory group that has been formed to provide some input in this. I know that this work was very far along internally with staff before that group had begun meeting, but to have folks outside stakeholders as well who are very involved in helping to develop the guiding principles, and also then very invested in the statement as well, and feel some ownership over it. But very, very well done. I think it really encapsulates a lot what we do, why we should be proud.
Thank you very much for that feedback, and I'll certainly make sure that is shared with the team. And we'll continue to build upon this and reflect it to the community as much as possible, so they understand why we're here and what we're focused on. Okay, so the next update here for you is regarding applying for federal grants. This is something I mentioned to you before the recess in the spring, late spring. We have been working jointly with city staff and DASH staff to examine and identify the best way to seek federal grant projects that would fund the electrification of the fleet, the infrastructure, and other related potential projects, including one of the things Jim mentioned, which would be on-route charging and facility infrastructure projects, such as to supplement the somewhat limited amount of money that we have for the initial expansion of the facility. For those of you who were here, you'll recall that there are several phases of that addition and sort of future-proofing it, building it so that it could be expanded upon, solar could be added, those kinds of things. Understanding the current administration has put a lot of emphasis into infrastructure, and there are just a lot more opportunities out there to pursue this. Feels like the right time. Further, it's recognized that there's a $56 million gap in the city's planned 10-year fleet replacement project in order for us to switch to electric. The thing I will highlight to you all here, just to understand, and this is also going to be explained to City Council, and some of you I've had a chance to talk with individually about this. These are discretionary grant programs. This is not considering changing in any way that the federal formula grants, which are operating and capital programs, are assigned to this region. That is because the WMATA Compact defines how those flow. NVTC is established in order to manage that. So we are not touching the formula programs. Formula, is just a reminder, is driven by population and population density metrics, as well as ridership and other numbers. That's what this establishes how much money each year WMATA gets for capital programs. If we took that, then we would simply remove money from WMATA and somehow have to make up for that. So it just doesn't make any sense. These discretionary grants are not necessarily guaranteed to be year-over-year awards, but we feel like we have a very strong opportunity to apply for them. And we are positioned quite well in our programs to be qualified applicants. So what's going to happen, there's a lot more information included in your packet. I'll just ask you to review that as you have time, if you've not had a chance to look at it. There's also a white paper that was drafted for the city to understand what it's going to take for us to receive these funds. And City Council is going to be briefed on this. It's not entirely clear exactly how that discussion is expected to go, but essentially it's the same as what I'm doing with you, as I've talked about previously, is to say, this is a direction we feel like we should go. Do you have concerns about it? What are your thoughts? Is there anything that you have on your mind that you would like to make sure is addressed? The only other thing I would say is that it's to be determined exactly who the applicant will be and how the applicant process will flow. DASH is certainly can be qualified to be a direct recipient or applicant directly with FTA. However, because of our intertwined structure, particularly on the financial side with the city, it's quite unique in that regard. And so it doesn't lend itself well to that approach. So we think what's going to happen is it's going to be recommended that the city is the direct applicant, and then we are a sub-recipient. So the money essentially will flow through the city. DASH will, as previously, take care of the procurement, take care of the compliance related matters, take care of all of the policies that go along with it, meet with FTA for triennial reviews and those kinds of things, obviously with city staff. But we want to make sure, number one, and most importantly, that this doesn't become a spider web that goes out into other parts of the city, because that is something that could become quite tricky and messy. And the way we're set up is intended to avoid that. That's why DASH is a separate entity, as we are. So Matt, you looks like you have a question.
Yeah, and I'm so excited that we got to this point. In the past, I think you've said you'd have to hire an additional administrator, and it may take away the efficacy of the monies. I take it if the city's handling the admin, that won't be a problem for you.
Well, there are going to be two FTEs that we're going to say initially need to be funded in order for us to pursue this. One would be at Dash, which would be a grants manager at Dash, and one conceivably would be potentially in TNES or somewhere within the city, who would be the grants manager on that side, because there is another component of this, and that's the paratransit service that Dash does not operate. So there's compliance matters that go on there. It will frankly add work and staff over time to meet these requirements. However, if we're talking about millions and millions of dollars, I think the general consensus and feeling here is that it's worth it, even if we have to invest in some more personnel just to make us able to meet the ongoing requirements. And again, although they're discretionary, they come back year over year and they change. So we might have a different discretionary program we go after 2-3 years from now.
And then my second question, and I'm glad to hear that, is will this in any way negatively affect the state monies that we apply for?
No, the only potential negative impact it will have is on our ability to perform charter services. It's not quite clear exactly how significant that impact will be and how we'll navigate that, but that's something we're looking at. And that's become actually quite a sizable chunk of our revenue. Obviously, we have no fare revenue anymore. So the only revenue sources we have outside of city subsidy is ad revenue, which is brand new to us, and charters. And so that might be something that's lost. It's not quite clear exactly how that's going to shape out, but in transit systems that I've been in before that receive federal funds, charters are a no-no. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Josh, I just wanted to, something I've mentioned to you, and I just want to, share with the board, and this certainly is not an insurmountable obstacle or reason not to do this. Those of us who are career federal employees are prohibited, in the executive branch at least, are prohibited from representing an organization before the federal government. So while I have been told that the board's role in dealing with FTA would be very limited, I as chair could never sign a letter to FTA, an application for funding, or participate in a meeting with FTA as a representative of Dash. I can as a private citizen. It's actually a criminal violation to do so. And Steve, our current vice chair, is also a executive branch federal employee, and while he's not here tonight, I believe would be subject to the same restrictions. So as we go through this, that is something we will have to figure out process within the board of dealing with FTA if there is any involvement that we need to have. And I do understand most of it is at the staff level. I just want to put that out there.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for raising that. We would certainly add that to one of the considerations. So I'll just ask if Hillary wants to add anything that I've missed here. I know Hillary's jointly navigating this with me now that she's back on the city side. It's still a moving target, so to say, and we're still sorting some things out, but we'll continue to keep you updated. But Hillary, is there anything I missed that you want to make sure we cover?
No, I think you covered it. I think, we've looked at this a number of times over the past few years, the city and Dash together, and previously we kind of came to the conclusion that it didn't make sense in terms of what money was out there and in the region, what we were likely to get, and also knowing we'd have to have 2 full-time FTEs, and then we're not maybe that likely to get a lot of money, was a reason that we had not moved down this path earlier. But particularly with the new infrastructure bills that are out and grants that we're seeing coming, I think this is going to be really good for the city and Dash, and the amount of funds that we can get. I mean, Alexandria is, ahead of so many other cities in terms of the electrification, and that $56 million gap is large, but I think that we will be very competitive as a jurisdiction for a lot of these funds. So I think it's good, and it is going to be extra work, but I think it'll bring a lot of money to the city. So.
Okay, thank you, Hillary. So the next item, this is an action item for you all. The next 2 items, I believe, are action items for you, or maybe the next 3. This is a electronic meeting policy. The draft policy has been included in your board packet. The format that we are to use was provided previously by the city. I will say that Chair Kaplan has asked that we keep in close contact with the city to understand what the guidance is and whether it will change. But as of right now, the guidance is that it is what it is until September 30th, and then it expires. So theoretically, if nothing changes between now and the 30th, a quorum will have to be met in person, and we'll have to have the electronic meeting policy in place to have any kind of hybrid attendance. I won't go through the details of what's in there as it was sent previously, but I would point out a couple of things to be aware of. And I know that maybe David, you'd like to speak a little bit about this, because I know another commission you were on went through this, but the participation electronically to be absent is due to a personal matter shall be limited in each calendar year to either 2 meetings or 25% of the meetings held, rounded up to the next whole number. That was a guidance that was given to us in the policy requirements. That's not something that we came up with, but I know that some people have taken concern with that. The last thing I will say is that we have equipped the dashboard meeting room, which for those of you who've been there, can be opened up into a larger space, and we can probably space the tables more significantly with cameras and Zoom equipment. And so we've had some staff meetings in there and used that. It's not quite as easy to do as this is for us. And one of the other challenges we have with it is that when you have a face mask on, the microphone doesn't pick you up very well. So that's been a problem for us in hybrid meetings, just to be aware of. But I would turn this over maybe to David and just let you speak on it, because I know you've been thinking a lot about this, and this is something that you've gone through with other.
Yeah. So as I mentioned in the earlier discussion, I serve on the Commission on Aging as well. We actually will have our September meeting tomorrow. So this policy is on the agenda for our approval as well, and looks very much similar to what is proposed here, because this is what the city clerk's office issued to us. I will say at the Commission on Aging, which is primarily made up of individuals who are over the age of 60, because that's the law that under Older Americans Act that created these commissions, there are rules about having representation of predominantly senior citizens and older adults on that group, has been pushing the city very hard to be able to continue hybrid meetings. And I will note that I will clarify this tomorrow, but it seems that our commission at least is operating now under the assumption that the present arrangement is going to continue through the remainder of the fall, because I've gotten Zoom invites to meetings that are being held after September 30th by that commission, but we'll see. I do know that the policy is a bit restrictive, as Josh mentioned, in terms of granting excused absences. And I know you have to come through me for that. It's not my intention at all to want people to have to justify or go into details about their personal business that may preclude them from being able to attend a meeting. So I will be very liberal in granting those excused absences within the parameters of the policy. So I think we do need to enact this, because our understanding is if we are recalled in October, and we were going to have this problem if we were recalled this month, frankly, was that until we have an electronic meeting policy, then we can't have anybody meeting remotely at all. And so we all have to be in the room. So it is important that we vote on this if we do have to go back to meeting in person, so that there is a mechanism in place to accommodate it. The other piece I'll say about this, and I have been very outspoken, if you will, about getting back to meeting at City Hall when we are meeting in person, because of some of the accessibility challenges for people who ride transit in terms of coming to this facility. This facility was built to be very secure, because you need it to be secure to prevent people from getting in and commandeering buses or wandering around the facility and doing who knows what. But it's not, our boardroom even is not very publicly accessible. Tonight I had to call Josh from outside our building because the earphone was not working. The dash staff could not hear me buzzing, and so therefore no one knew I was at the front door even to get in. And I've talked somewhat about the walk from Duke Street here and some accessibility challenges. But I know going back to City Hall also has its challenges, because those rooms it sounds like have not had some of the technology upgrades that the dash facility has, just in terms of being able to run the meetings. And also our staff has much more familiarity with running meetings here using equipment that they control. But I think that's in addition to this, something that we do have to consider, because we're going to have some public hearings in coming months, and when we do get back into person, what our plan is for resuming meetings in a place that is very easy for people who ride transit to be able to participate in person, because we're not going to be able to limit, when we reopen our meetings, we're not going to be able to limit the number of people from the public who are coming in, is my understanding. We're going to have to go ahead and go back to rules the way they were, although masks will certainly be required if there's a masking requirement inside government facility that exists at the time we hold our meetings. So I would encourage members to vote in favor of this policy so we have it in place. And Beth checks in regularly with the city clerk's office to see where we are in terms of extended guidance. And I think they know what commissions want in terms of trying to continue to balance that public accessibility versus being able to keep folks safe. Are there others who have comments on this? Okay.
I'm sorry, I would just add, a lot of this is driven by, quite frankly, what I would see as antiquated public forum participation laws. So I don't even know that a lot of this is being driven locally by the city. And I just wanted to make that clear. I feel like there's certainly support within the city of understanding this. I don't understand why, this is a personal opinion I'm stating, I don't understand why this hasn't been addressed more effectively on the state level. Maybe it has, I'm just unaware of it, but it just seems very inflexible, and I understand that. So we as staff, and certainly the ones who are responsible for helping me to put these meetings together, we'll do everything we can to adapt to whatever new guidance comes out if there are alternative options outside of what this policy states.
And Josh, that's a good point. It really was, it's easy sometimes to say, oh, it's government's fault and you blame the local government, but you're right that the city is really reacting to what has come down from Richmond. And my understanding is there's a FOIA council that actually advises the legislature on changes. And because they have to make the changes essentially the year before the legislature meets, that we're just running into, there are a lot of delays because of, they're reacting, but their schedule is unfortunately not accelerated to deal with the nature of the emergency that we're currently in. And you're right, everybody around the state is dealing with the same thing. So appreciate you bringing that up. I know we have a couple of folks who have questions.
Yeah, I think Jim had his up first.
And I appreciate the discussion on this delicate question. I guess I would just note, my own personal view for what it's worth, which is that to the extent that there is the ability to continue remote meetings, I certainly, just from a operation of the board perspective, we lose something by not being in person, but I don't think we lose very much, frankly. And when someone who has 3 unvaccinated children for the foreseeable future, I am trying to minimize certainly my exposure to people indoors. And this would seem like an unnecessary reason to expose ourselves to people who, like you, Josh, are vaccinated. I'm sure everyone on this call is vaccinated, but maybe symptomatic just because of the nature of the Delta infection. So I recognize there are some limitations on what we can and can't do at this moment, but I want to express on my behalf, at least, that I think we should make clear as a board, if others agree with my point of view, to express that to the city and that be passed on to the state. Because there's just, given the Delta variant and all the other protocols in place, there's no reason that we should be meeting in person from my perspective at this time. However much I'd love to.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I share those comments. Looks like Mr. Chambers had a question at one point.
Hey, thanks, Josh. I just put my hand down, and frankly, I was going to say something very similar to what Jim just said. So I'll just go on the record as seconding Jim's comments.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'll turn it to you to call for a vote or further discussion.
We should go ahead and pass this, because without this in place, then nobody can participate remotely for any reason. So I would encourage us to have this in place. And I would assume, we were talking earlier about legislation. This is not necessarily a transit matter. It's something that affects, how the city conducts its business. But I'm sure that this is something that will be in the city's legislative package for the coming year. I can guarantee that they will be asking Richmond for much more flexibility. So I don't know, it's something that we need to initiate, but I think it would be, we have in asking the question as Beth has done, at Josh's my direction in talking with the clerk's office, they're well aware of our position and some of the challenges that we have, and also understanding too, as I mentioned, some of what City Hall needs to have done in terms of having the technology to eventually accommodate hybrid meetings in their conference rooms, so that people can very robustly follow along and participate remotely. They just don't have the technology that we do here, which is really unfortunate, and hopefully they will be able over time to catch up to that. So I'll ask if there's a motion to adopt the meeting policy.
So moved.
Moved by Linda. Is there a second?
Second.
I don't know who was first there.
I think it was Ian.
Ian, okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you for doing that. And I appreciate, we also now got some additional feedback per what I asked for earlier, which was in response to Beth's comment about what would be required to bring people back and to understand what are some of the hesitations in coming back, and hearing a lot about those who have young children who are not yet eligible to be vaccinated. And that's, a very, very good point and very good reason as to why caution, why we need to remain cautious about this. So we will be in touch as we have more guidance from the city, which I would anticipate in the coming weeks, because October is going to be here very soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
We can move on to the next item.
Yeah, the next item is a follow-up on the fare free framework, which we discussed briefly before the recess of the board in the spring as well. Just as a quick reminder of what this is, and then I'm going to open up for any Q&A, and I've just asked Martin to be available to help answer this as well, since he worked heavily on this along with Evan. This is a guideline to establish how fare free will be sustained, and what the processes are that will happen over the years as we continue to be fare free, or if there is an effort to step back from fare free, what the notice requirements are and whatnot. So I'll open it to any discussion or questions, or ask Martin if he wants to add anything to this. And I'm just also trying to limit my speaking for my long-term alertness.
Hey, Josh, may I just add one thing? I saw in the press on one of your quotes or something, it wasn't your quote, but I think the press may have misconstrued by saying that it's a 10-month plan. That's not true, is it?
I'm not 10-month plan. I don't recall what that would be related to. There were a lot of questions about how we sustain it going forward, and that's the next item, is going to be the application for the TRIP funding, which Evan is also going to help step us through. But there are obviously a lot of moving parts. This, of course, though, is maybe what they're looking at is the fiscal year, right? July 1 to June 30th. We're only going fare free from September. At this moment, we're funded for September through June 30th. So maybe that's where they're quoting that 10 months. It's just saying that that's all it's committed to right now.
Matt, you were very kind to send some recognition about Josh was interviewed in the Washington Post in the Metro section within the last couple of weeks about the Fare Free program. Really good press, and I meant to follow up and respond to that, to ask if we could send that out to the entire board for those that missed that, because that was a really, really good article and a great effort. So we can just send that as a follow-up to the meeting.
Do you want me to send it out to you, Dave, or to the entire board? Whatever you want.
I'm sure we have a copy here internally at Dash, and we could just have Beth send it to the entire distribution list.
Okay, and actually, now that you prompt my attention, this was a different article that was in, I think, this Sunday's Washington Post dealing with regional transit changes in the wake of COVID. It was favorable press, but I just didn't want people to think that it was 10 months and done, and then we go back, and this was just to get riders back and so on and so forth. So thank you.
Yeah, that's certainly a lot of what this framework is about. Excuse me, as well as the TRIP program and the TRIP application, because as you'll see in that next part, there's a significant commitment required there to obtain that money. So, Martin, is there anything that we need to add to this discussion before, once you're finished, you can turn it over to the chair for consideration?
No, Josh, I think you've covered it pretty well. I agree. I think the 10-month question was regarding the current fiscal year. Regarding FY23, we'll have some good idea next week when City Council considers our TRIP TRIP resolution to move forward with the application for those funds, which would allow us to go fare free for the next 4 years. So I think once we get clarification on that the City Council understands the commitment that they're making. I think that'll be kind of a good indication that if we do receive the TRIP funding, which we're optimistic that we will, that we'll be able to move forward with free fares for the next 4 years. And Evan will probably elaborate on that with the next item, but I turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Martin. So the reason Josh and staff developed the fare-free framework was because, in talking with City Council about the ongoing sustainability of this program, setting certain conditions and understanding about costs and about when we would decommission equipment and then what would be required. You can't just flip a switch, especially when it's taking the fare boxes off and just say, okay, we're going to charge fares again. So it's really kind of outlining and giving a set of expectations for what has to happen if this program is unable to continue. Also the metrics as to, what this looks like, what are the benefits that we're receiving, and how do we measure that? Because for a substantial investment made both city dollars and then likely state grants as well, we need to be able to show that there's significant community benefits. I think this document really addresses the things that we set out in the spring that we had concerns and wanted to make sure that would be addressed and documented so that our city leaders present and future understand what this program entails. So it was in my mind a very good effort. So I'll call for a motion to adopt it. Is there a motion?
Move to adopt the dash fare free framework as written.
Moved by Matt. Is there a second? Second, was that Hillary?
Yes.
Okay, second by Hillary. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The last item here, I'll just introduce, and then I'm going to turn it over to Evan, and then I'll remain available to answer any questions. But after he reviews this with you all and the details behind it, we would ask you again, Mr. Chair, to take action on this item so that it can then be taken to City Council for consideration jointly as well. And then that'll conclude my general manager's report. So Evan, I'll let you take it away.
Mr. Chair and members of the board, I think many of you are aware of the Transit Ridership Incentive Program, or TRIP, which was created by the 2020 Virginia General Assembly. And it has two goals, one of which is to support regional transit projects that connect urban areas. And over the long term, that's most of the funding in TRIP is focusing on that. But it also supports development of zero and subsidized fare programs. It just so happened, I think for a variety of reasons, they increased the funding for the zero fare aspect of the program to $12.5 million for fiscal 22. That's considerably more than that is currently projected to be available in subsequent fiscal years, more in like the $3 to $4 million per fiscal year range after that. So this is a particularly good year for us to apply and potentially lock several years of funding in place for this program. The city is developing the application, and we've collaborated with city staff in developing that application. We basically modeled what we believe our passenger revenue would be over the next few years if we were collecting fares based on projections of ridership. And that data all came from the study that was completed by city staff under Jen and Martin's leadership, looking at the impact of different ways to reduce fares for low-income populations or for the entire system. And one of the conclusions of that study is that the most efficient and cost-effective way to help the most people and have the greatest impact would be to implement a zero fare system entirely, with a projection of about 23% increase in ridership, which, as you know, is one of the big reasons why City Council funded us to be fare-free in fiscal 22. So the city is preparing that application and will be requesting permission from City Council to actually send it and apply for up to $8 million. The way that TRIP works is that they're going to look at what we think our projected revenue is, and they're going to look at the state share that we're proposing in each year of the program. It could be as high as 80%, as low, I believe, as 20%. And that's going to be negotiable based on how many people apply around the state and how much, how competitive those applications are. We think because our program's already implemented and because we have a very solid study backing up that application, that ours is going to be very competitive, but we don't know how much we will be awarded, but we're applying for up to $8 million. And this resolution before you simply is in support of the city's application. Should we be awarded this funding, it's going to do a lot to help with the budget deficit I'm about to talk about for fiscal 22, as well as help the budget for fiscal 23 and 24. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Other questions for Evan? Barry?
Hey, forgive maybe a sort of a newbie question here, but why not go for the full 12 and a half?
Thanks for your question. It's based on, it's based on how much passenger revenue that we project to have in these years. The most we can ask for is an 80% state share, and that's what we're asking for in year one. And then they're expecting a declining state share after that in year 2 and 3, and then 100% local support in year 4. So we're trying to max that out as much as we can. It's happened before that the state says, we don't have enough applications and you want a little bit more money than you applied for, but we really just don't know how competitive this is going to be.
Thank you.
When we talked about this program early on, I remember that there was a lot of interest we anticipated from some of the more rural systems that have very little fare box recovery, because for them it wouldn't be a very, they were mostly subsidizing that locally anyway, so that wouldn't be a very big lift and probably a large benefit. So, and I think City of Richmond also was very interested with their transit system and applying for some of the money. So we though were the only system in Northern Virginia that was, and I don't know if that has changed in the past few months, that was considering pursuing any of this money in year one though, which I think makes us very, very competitive. All right, so we do need, in order to apply for the money, the board has to approve the resolution that you see on the screen. It was included in your packet. So is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Thank you, Linda. Second by Matt. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Are there any opposition, any abstentions? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, Evan, we'll go back to you for your final financial report. So,
thank you, Mr. Chair. My reports begin on page 20 of your packet. And what I'll do is talk first about June and the close of fiscal 21, and then get into fiscal 22 and the July results, but really focusing on the projection for the rest of the fiscal year. So to finish out fiscal 21, our net position, if you will, which is the final accrual basis result within Dash, which is one fund among many in the city, increased by $2.3 million. And really that's reflecting mostly new capital assets, new buses, 6 new electric buses, minus the depreciation on all of our capital assets. But in terms of We also prepare financial statements, which are the fund financial statements, which don't take into account those big swings for capital assets. And it's really just looking the flow of dollars in the current fiscal year and our compliance against our budget. And what we did is we actually somewhat artificially made that go exactly to zero. And that is because a big part of our revenue in fiscal 21 was the CARES Act funds that we received via WMATA. And the plan all along, as I discussed in the spring, was to save anything that was remaining at the end of the fiscal year. And we just booked that as deferred revenue at the end of the year, and then it's available to support the fiscal 22 budget. We had planned on 1.6 million, or projected that would be available at the end of the year. It turned out to be a 1.3 million. And that's because several reasons, one of them being that fuel costs have increased. And also we started recruiting very early for the new Dash network. We had to do that in order because of the amount of throughput that we can accommodate in our training program. And also just because we wanted to make sure that we had all the operators here and trained by the time the new network launched and the service increases that went along with that here in September. So early on, we brought on a full-time recruiting specialist who did nothing but recruit bus operators all day, and she's been doing a great job. But we've also had an increased headcount through the final months, and that resulted in us spending a little bit faster than we anticipated. But the financial statements are on pages 21, 22, and 23. Happy to answer any questions you have about fiscal 21. All right. And as I said earlier, I really just, I want to underline the support that we got throughout the fiscal year and throughout the whole pandemic from the finance department and from the budget office, and helping us navigate the different federal programs and the subsidy credits that were ultimately from federal dollars that we received through WMATA, and also helping us reimburse as much as we could from FEMA disaster funds related to the pandemic. And there's a number of people who worked really hard to make sure that Dash had all the resources it needed in that fiscal year, and too many to name, many of them working for Ian and his group in the accounting division, and we're just really deeply thankful for their partnership. But moving ahead to fiscal 22, in July, we did have a monthly surplus of almost $400,000. That is mostly because our first payroll in July was largely accrued back to fiscal 21. I think if that had not happened, we would have run a slight deficit for the month, and that tracks with what I'm about to say, which is that we're projecting a large deficit for the year, at about 1.9 million, and there's a lot of reasons for that, which you may have read already, but I'll just kind of quickly highlight here and then answer the questions that you have. I think before I get into the details, I want to say that we have sources to address that deficit, and a lot of that deficit we knew was coming at the beginning, before we even got into this fiscal year, because of some structural factors that we have going on. But TRIP is the number one way in which we could resolve that deficit. If we receive everything we hope to receive in fiscal 22, it would account for it entirely. And if we don't, then there are other funding sources, such as the American Rescue Plan transit dollars that the city has received, as well as just doing our best to control spending. That could be other ways that we resolve this deficit. And largely because we don't know what the TRIP award, we have this bit of uncertainty that we would prefer not to have right now. But I can say that, TRIP is an option, and the city has over $8 million allocated from the American Rescue Plan specifically for transit only. That is another option that could help us address this. But with that, hopefully a little bit of reassurance in mind, I'll just go over the reasons for this deficit. The first of which is the fact of going fare free. And while council provided for funds 1.47 million to replace regular passenger revenue that we are no longer collecting, the 395 commuter choice grants, which we've been awarded to fund the increased service on lines 35 and 36A and B, they assumed that we were going to have more ridership and therefore more fare revenue. And that elimination of that additional new fare revenue was not contemplated in the additional subsidy that we had. And so that created a built-in deficit of around 850,000. That also accounts for some fare collection costs that we cannot immediately recover in going fare free. And a lot of that has to do with the Smart Trip system and what we support with Smart Trip, and because we still need to use that system on our fare boxes to count ridership for the time being. So that's $850,000 of it. The next piece, and this is unfortunate news, is that the Department of Defense's Washington headquarters service, with whom we've partnered for a decade in running the Mark Center Express, they have rather suddenly decided to discontinue that route. We have worked with their staff to ensure that it continues through the end of November to give us time to adjust our customer information, and for the operators who have already bid on that work to be driving that route. But the loss of that revenue less the cost savings that we would gain totals $365,000 in fiscal 22. You may be wondering as much as I am why they're looking to discontinue that. And I think the rise of teleworking and overall low ridership and fewer people returning to their offices as well is playing largely, having a large role in their thinking. We will be sitting down with them hopefully in October to talk with them some more and to see if there's any opportunity to find new ways to restructure the route and to serve their needs in some other way. But as of right now, we have to assume that we're going to lose all the revenue after November on that route.
It would seem, Evan, the move to fare free would also have played a part in that, because there is other service that runs from Pentagon down to serve the West End. So, I mean, they may have gotten there eventually. It seems to me maybe they would have gotten there eventually because of the other factors you mentioned, but maybe a little faster now, understanding that it was essentially going to be a free service for everybody. So why should they pay for something unique? So I wonder if that's feedback you'll get from them when you have that meeting.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And I think what we tried to emphasize with them is that they were never paying for it to be free. They're paying for the additional service, to be provided trips that they would not otherwise have, and for it to be express. But I think that they're comfortable with the staff who are coming in, just taking the local service on the 102 from King Street Metro. But we'll see, how their staff and employees experience that, and if they have any other thoughts on it as we go forward. But I know, we're very much invested in Mark Center, and we have a number of routes, very frequent routes, part of the new Dash network that go there. So, we want to deepen that partnership over time as much as we can. The next item, $268,000 of this deficit, is related to additional spending in fiscal 21 and therefore lower CARES Act funds remaining for fiscal 22 that I discussed earlier. But the largest piece of it is really related to the new Dash network launch. This has taken Dash to a new place of operating 24/7, 365 days a year. I think as all of you know, Dash has been a service very much focused on the peaks, morning rush, afternoon rush. And we have always gotten by with 2 shifts in terms of our operations supervision and most of our maintenance team, except for the people, the miracle workers who fuel the buses late into the evening, actual mechanics. We largely only have 2 shifts. And we realized as we put the new Dash network into operation that we needed to build out that staff. And enable the new Dash Operations Control Center to function almost 24/7, to add a 3rd shift in maintenance, to add a full-time recruiting specialist to help us meet our bus operator requirement. And all of that together is about $550,000 that is contributing to our deficit in this fiscal year. Those are costs that we're going to work into the budget going forward, and that partially, is supported by the grants that we've received from the I-395 Commuter Choice Program. But those grants were not able to support everything, that we need to transform from a weekday largely operation to an operation that's going to meet the needs of people in the midday, in the evening, and in the weekends for the new Dash network. So that is the causes of this deficit right now. As I said already, TRIP is the largest possible funding source to address it, and could do so entirely. At the same time, we are already suspending all discretionary capital purchases in fiscal 22, and any travel and training that's not absolutely essential. An example of essential travel would be, visiting a bus manufacturer related to a bus build, but things other than that, we have already limited and will continue to do so in this fiscal year. that's where we are. The actual reports are on pages 28 through 30. You'll see on the budget versus actual report on page 30, there is a highlighted line for the TBD amount of trip funding we hope to supplement in our revenue that could very much make up for the situation that we're in. Happy to answer the questions that you have.
Before you do that, Evan, can you didn't mention ARPA, or the American Rescue Plan Act. Can you speak briefly about what that is and kind of the discussions you've had with the city staff about how that potentially will come into play or not into play throughout the coming year?
Absolutely. So just as with the CARES Act and the second coronavirus-related relief bill, which is called CRISA, that funding has been allocated by federal formulas, and so it all went to WMATA. But then what WMATA has done is shared, kind of doing some, using the same formulas applying to the service that the jurisdictions in the DC region operate. They have allocated sub-portions of that to each jurisdiction. The city's share of the American Rescue Plan transit dollars is about 8.4 million. And what the city is doing, what the budget office is looking at, is what's the best way to use that funding over several years, because it's eligible through fiscal 24. And not just for DASH, but also to support WMATA. So we're in deep conversation with them. They are very well aware of where we are for fiscal 22, what we hope to do and continue to expand the new DASH network, and just bringing these resources to bear to fully support our team in operating the service, which is at a such higher level and spanning more of the day and the week than what we've operated in the past. And so if TRIP does not cover this need entirely, it's possible that that ARPA could be the next source, likely that ARPA would be the next source to step in to meet that need, and also the need that we'll have for a fiscal 23 budget. But we're just strategizing the best way to use those funds.
I think Matt had his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Evan, and I will miss your reports each month, and thanks for the great job you've done. Do you think it would be worth our while to go back to the schools and see if the Department of Education wants to give us any money, since you know, the benefit that we extended to them to nurture goodwill and ridership sort of passed now that the fares are free? I would imagine more kids are going to maybe be riding. I don't know. But I think we're in the situation now, budget-wise, where things look pretty bleak.
Well, I don't know how I could respond to that, Matt, but we've, you know, that's certainly been a great partnership, and I don't know where it's going to be, because we're not you giving the schools the special fare cards anymore. And Martin can speak more to this. It's going to be a little bit harder, I think, for us to track the exact ridership of students on the DASH system. But as you said, it's certainly a bigger benefit to them, and we wouldn't, that's exactly what we're hoping for as a city together, you know, to provide that resource for the students.
I'm happy to ask, Matt. You know, worst they say is no. So I'm certainly happy to bring that up.
I mean, they could maybe have fewer school buses. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to say here is this is a projection, right? And I appreciate that it's a very conservative one, and certainly there's a lot of challenges in it. It's going to be a very challenging year for us. You know, my reflection is that when we were trying to build this budget, we were in the middle of, we still thought that if you touched anything outside of your home, you were immediately going to have COVID, like through your skin. I mean, this budget was written at a time when things were just so incredibly out of whack. We had no idea what was going on. You know, so it's not surprising that it was challenging enough at that point, and then we're seeing what we're seeing. But I think that, you know, the approach here is early on to be very intentional. And I will continue to do that and ask Evan's successor to do the same, both in communicating with the city about kind of where we are and where we think things are going, but also why and you know, and how we need to support this. You know, early on there were questions asked of me, you know, what kind of sacrifices do we make? And quite frankly, the success of the rollout of the new network is so incredibly critical. I mean, we have seen more press and more public interest in that service change and the switch over to fare free than I think in my entire time at Dash. And if we botch something like that because we shortfall our operations department, or somehow diminish our maintenance program, or fail to support it in a way that makes sure we can even meet what we've committed to, which goes back to the issue of driver recruitment, staffing, and those kinds of things. That is a terribly difficult position to get out of, and one that can damage the transit system for years. An adverse fiscal situation is not ideal, and it's something that I'm committed to working through if it comes to that because of the way trip shakes out or whatnot. But that's certainly something that I feel is more manageable than a totally total failure, for example, on the new network or our service quality or safety or whatnot. So, a number of these decisions are intentional, and yes, they do put us in a more challenging situation. But there's something that we couldn't afford not to do, very, very specifically. And the other thing I will say is a recognition of the environment we're in. We are terribly challenged in getting people, and we're seeing that in everyone I talk to, in every industry, it seems like. And so we've had to pour immense resources into recruitment, into training, and then we always have attrition of training. We end up, we start with 20 drivers and we end up with 10. It's hard to say. These are all things that have been amplified in the outcomes of this pandemic, and are further challenged because we've now shifted our operation, as Evan pointed, to 24/7. So I'm very confident the team can do it, and I'm very proud of what's happening within the organization and the service we're putting on the road. And I think that this is going to be something that is manageable and we can figure out in time, but we're not going to know a lot more about until the next couple of months.
To that, Josh, your point about the recruitment and training, we were talking back when the collective bargaining agreement was approved, and you were sharing that the phones and Dash HR were ringing off the hook with former employees, operators wanting to come back because we had really invested so much in, creating a fair and robust compensation package. So, it really does speak to how much, how challenging the labor market is. That you imagine if we had not made those changes, the struggles we would have had in getting enough of a workforce in who can operate those buses. So, I do hope that over time that some of the labor market challenges do start to soften, and understanding there are a whole lot of reasons, including childcare and that have to be solved at a systemic level for people to be able to come back. But I think that there definitely are some challenges from COVID that we may not have necessarily thought of in terms of our industry and how we manage our resources this year. So
yeah, we went from having lines out the door to no applications at all.
Yeah.
And in a matter of a couple of months. And we are still our compensation is still relative to other systems strong. Other systems are starting to offer bonuses, sign-on bonuses, and various other things. I think many of them are leveraging more and more of the ARPA money and the CARES Act money to create those incentives. But it's been a real challenge, and to be candid, as we continue to move into particularly planning for the next budget, the challenge is going to get even more significant. Automatically, we're going to go into the last year of our labor contract. That's the most expensive year of the contract. It's the most significant increases of the entire contract happen in that year, along with the service provisions for, so this kind of goes back to the beginning of the meeting where we were talking about priorities and those kinds of things. We'll definitely work on those for you all. There are going to be some built-in priorities that are going to be challenges to meet just right out the door. Again, I'm confident in the resolve of our team and the city staff who work so well with us, for many years to help us when we get in these situations and also help us to figure out as we move forward. We're a critical infrastructure and we're invested in that. So,
yeah, as Josh said, certainly we recognize this is a big investment in transit, in fiscal 22 to solve this deficit. We're really thankful that we have some non-general fund sources to address the funding shortfall that we have this year. Going forward, we know it'll be a general fund investment to operate the new Dash network at the level that the community has planned for in the Alexandria Transit Vision Plan, and just facing the costs of what it takes to recruit, highly trained and motivated bus operators and staff at every level. And we want to offer that top quality service to the community, and to do so, currently the policy is to do so without charging fares. So we understand that that's a large investment. I think my priority is to, as conservatively as possible, estimate the cost of that. And then, the decision makers will decide what the city can take on, in that regard, in a healthy and, fiscally sound way.
Are there further questions for Evan? Well, we again thank you, and we will miss you because you provide the information as we need to see it in a very clear and understandable way, and for us then to be able to react and to take action. And again, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Evan.
Yeah, before we hand it over to Martin, I'll just say the same. And this is a particularly terrible week for me to be out sick. I've only been able to watch the new network from afar. Although over the weekend I was able to get around the city and just see what was happening. But I would say the one comment that I would like to about Evan, which is, ever since he stepped foot in Dash, he has committed everything he's done to the success of the organization. And that is reflected in him and the entire team. I really appreciate this is the best senior management team I've worked with in the industry. And so Evan is going to leave a big hole in that team to be filled. But I also have great confidence in our team as a whole, and everyone, what they bring to the table is just incredible in what they do. I have always supported and always encouraged my team to love what they do and always make sure they're coming in to do what they love. And when they see something that excites them or a prospect in their life that is an improvement or even just a new challenge that they would like to take on, they should always pursue it. Whether it's good for me and my team or in this case, a loss, it's a gain for everybody. And so the fact that Evan will be at the city and won't be far, his email won't change, and we still know how to reach him. And his new boss has graciously agreed to provide Evan to come back as needed to help train the our new director of finance. You may see his face again at some point, but for now we're just really excited for him and wish him all the best in his new role just down the street. All right, so with that, Martin, we'll turn it over to you for your report, and I hope that yes, I did. I put your slides in that you sent, so I'll move through as you go.
Okay, thanks, Josh. Good evening. As you all know by now, next slide, please. We are in day number 4 of our new Dash network operations. This is the second full weekday that we've operated the new network. So, it's very early, but I did want to share just a brief update tonight, and perhaps in next month's meeting, we'll have a more substantial update, but I just wanted to update the board on how things were going. As Hillary mentioned, September 5th was probably one of the most historic days in the city of Alexandria as far as transit goes in quite some time. We've got all the changes that she mentioned and I've listed here with the new network, free fares, the opening of our largest transit center by far, the King Street Metro, with the full bus loop becoming open for service, And then of course, Metro Bus and Metro Rail with their improvements as well, all positive things. So really excited to see these changes and excited to see what will come in the coming months. Next slide. I just wanted to highlight some of the outreach efforts that had been going on for the last couple of weeks. I won't mention all of these, but I do want to highlight that we did have a lot of route-specific announcements on the buses leading up to the launch, and these were geographically targeted. So if you were on a specific bus, the announcements would tell you what that bus would become on September 5th. So I think that was really helpful. We also have improved destination signs that have a lot more information about where the bus is going. So hopefully that will help customers as well. We had a lot of bus stop covers that we put on. Every single bus stop had a cover on it that alerted people to the changes. We had a huge effort on behalf of our ambassadors. Wanted to thank Whitney Code, Caitlin Bessel, and others, including a few on this call. I know Matt and Brandy both, and I think there might have been others. I apologize if I'm forgetting anyone, but we had a lot of great volunteers that helped out with our ambassador work. We really flooded the zone in terms of having people out at different stations throughout the last couple of weeks. They're still out there today, and they will be out there for a couple more days just to make sure that people understand what the new routes are doing. But I think we've had close to 300 hours of ambassadors being out there on the streets. So really pleased with that. We've also had supplemental customer service staffing to help field the increasing calls that we've been getting over the past few days. So that's been helpful. And just a lot of the other bullets I won't mention, but as we've mentioned, we've got a lot of positive local media coverage from local news stations and various other outlets. Next slide, please. Just a few photos here to give you a sense of some of the different things that have been going on with our operator bid, our dispatch center, our new bus wraps on line 35. We just covered up the AT1 Plus with a line 35 and changed one of the stops because the route changed slightly. So you'll see those out in the West End now. The destination sign work, you can see Gabriel Maury in the bottom left there. He's our ITS coordinator. He worked very hard on destination signs that I mentioned earlier. And then we've got just some more photos there of some other operations. So I want to just highlight maintenance as well, have done an incredible job of getting the bus fleet ready. And we were able to operate smoothly these first few days. Next slide, Josh. Thanks. One aspect of this that was kind of, I thought pretty interesting was the bus stop changeovers. So I have some photos here that show the effort of manufacturing the new signs, which are much larger and easier to read and have more information, including the stop names. And also the stop ID and some information on how you can get real-time information at that stop. So we made these new signs. We had to use covers to cover the signs temporarily. You can see our installation crew there in the top center photo. And then right below that is the evening crews that went around the night of the launch to tear off the temporary covers and reveal the new network signs. And we even got a nice shout out from the mayor talking about our elves going around that night. So it was nice to see that. And yeah, next slide. And the last slide I have here just kind of summarizes some of the early returns. As I mentioned, it's been a successful transition so far on Sunday with the reveal of the new network. We had our big test on Tuesday with the full weekday service. That was the kind of the biggest test we were going to face, and we were able to pass that. We were able to be fully staffed and had our fleet up to meet our PM pullout, which is usually when the most buses are needed. We had some minor issues related to CAD, our computer-aided dispatch, and farebox logins. Those are minimally impactful to customers. We are currently having some issues with Google Trip Planner, which is our main trip planner that we use. We are working to fix that. That was sort of out of our control. It was working for a couple of days, and then Google made a major change on how they ingest our GTFS transit data, and we are working with them to fix that. Other than that, as has been mentioned already, we are the midday, evening, weekend, and service changes increases are pretty substantial. I think it's been mentioned already, but I think just if you're driving around, I think many people have mentioned to me that you're seeing more buses, more dash buses. Just there's a stronger presence out there, especially on like Sunday night. I think we just saw we were looking at kind of the screen that shows where all the buses are with a map. And we were commenting that on Sunday night at 10 p.m., we have more buses out than we would have had on a normal Sunday during the peak of the Sunday. So just a lot of presence out there that hopefully will kind of lead people to notice Dash a little bit more and kind of start to make it more relevant for more people, which was the intent of this new network. Just some of the concerns we've received a number of calls and some feedback. I think the customer service numbers that we've seen we've gotten a lot of calls. The majority are just questions about, what the new route is and how do I get from A to B. I think we had about 54 calls at the call center yesterday, and I think I heard only 3 or 4 of them were complaints. They're mostly just questions. But the biggest complaint that we have heard is from residents along North Van Doren Street, which saw some changes that were negative. They have a new route. It's a Metrobus 7A that was kind of moved to that corridor. Some of them are not thrilled about having to use Metrobus, but the route itself also does not go exactly where the previous route, the AT5, went. So there are some additional transfers required. So we're working through some of the details on that. Metrobus, there was a little bit of, I think, a mix-up in terms of the service levels there. They, as you know, they implemented very quickly, they implemented a service increase across their network where they added service to create a network of 12-minute routes and 20-minute routes. And that was done very quickly. And I think somewhere in the shuffle there, they lost track of the agreed upon level of service on their 7A route that was meant to service this corridor. So it was implemented with a little bit less service than we expected. But we were working with the city and with Metrobus to increase the service on this route in December. So we are going to have that fixed by December. So hopefully that will help out a bit. We're also checking with ACPS. Some of their students, a good number of their students use dash buses in this corridor, and they now have to make a transfer to get to the high school that they did not previously have to make. So we're checking on their school bus routes and trying to make sure that we're able to provide options for them that they can use. But overall, I think it's been largely positive. I think our social media has been very positive, very, very supportive of these changes and making buses easier to use and more frequent. But I think, I think overall it's been very positive with those exceptions that I've noted. Happy to take any questions that the board has.
I know Ajayesha had one. She has her hand up. So.
Oh, right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Martin, for the update. I was able to take, the new network on Sunday. My husband, who also took it yesterday, coming back from City Hall. So we got to use it. I will say the King Street Loop, hopefully the sidewalk issues will be fixed when that's finalized in the fall from Hillary's update, because getting back to the loop to get to the buses, you had to go around, and that was kind of inconvenient instead of going directly through the restaurants over there. But I'll just flag that. But my issue that I flagged for David was, I guess I didn't realize line 35, how it might be impactful to folks that live on Reading and Rayburn until, a resident brought it up that lived in that area about accessibility concerns, being, someone with ADA issues and having to walk all the way to Beauregard to access the bus line, because Moda doesn't go down there either. But you have those townhomes in those apartment buildings. And if you live in those apartment buildings and you have to go up 3 flights of stairs, you may live in the hill in the townhomes, that's a further walk to access transit. So my question is, what would be the time cost to potentially add a 1-stop or 2 stops on that Reading to Rayburn Avenue loop into the community, if we could add that back to address possible accessibility issues that people may experience from having to walk so far from Beauregard to their homes?
Sure. Great question. And let me just comment real quick on King Street Metro question that you mentioned. The construction there, they're constructing a kiss and ride loop that will be used by taxis, Ubers, Lyfts, and some shuttles. I believe that's scheduled to be done within a few weeks. So that will mark the full completion of the King Street Metro project that will be completed fairly soon. Regarding Reading and Rayburn Avenue, you're correct. The changes that have been made there that we made with line 35 do require the folks that live down on Reading and Rayburn to walk a bit further to get up to Beauregard. That was one of the trade-offs that we were considering throughout the Alexandria Transit Vision Plan, is having to walk a little bit further to get to really frequent service where you don't have to wait very long. So as it stands right now, there is the need to walk that extra distance. The service on Beauregard is the most frequent service in the entire network. So we have buses coming every 10 minutes on weekdays, and every 15 minutes on weekends. We also relocated 2 stops on southbound Beauregard to make them about, I think it's been 100 to 200 feet closer than the old stops. So they're moved closer to Reading and Rayburn. So that instead of having to get up to Beauregard and then walk an additional 200, 300 feet, now you're able to just, the stops are right there. So hopefully that will help a little bit. Your question about the time savings, the time savings there, it varies by time of day and whether or not you're making stops and whether or not you get to the signals, but it's between 3 and 4 minutes, I think is about the estimated time. The route itself, we measure route cycle time, the amount of time it takes a bus to make a full loop on a route. And we try to build that in such a way that there's enough cushion that the buses are able to get adequate layover at the ends, so the drivers get their breaks and are able to operate safely, and also so they can be reliable. So that if we have traffic problems along the route, that the trips don't fall behind, and then as they go through the route, they get further and further behind. So if we were to add that loop back in, it would likely cost us an additional bus to do that, which would have some cost implications. So there's that, and I think to your question about the riders that are not able to walk further, that's certainly something we want to be sensitive about. I think that's whatever we can do to provide them more information about their options, in terms of whether it's paratransit or others. We just want to make sure that we do whatever we can to let them know about what alternatives might exist for them, if we do, assuming we keep the route on Beauregard Street.
Thank you. I mean, like, if we didn't add all, I think I drove down there after, Monday's picnic that I attended, and that was conversations brought up was, I think there was like 4 or 5 stops in that loop, but just like if 1 or 2 were added back, like that wouldn't be the whole 3 to 4 minutes. So I think that could be something that could be considered to address like someone who may be in a wheelchair, or someone like myself, if I had like a bunch of kids and had to walk all that far distance to go to the back of my apartment complex to get to my home. Like that's a challenge in bad weather too. So it's not just like ADA issues, it's also like just life and family issues too. If I broke my leg myself, I was on crutches having to walk back there. So, but thank you.
Of course. And just one more note is that adding the stop, you probably still incur the 3 to 4 minutes that the time is taken by having to wait at the left turn to go down there and then come back out. So you probably still have the extra time needed to do that, unfortunately. But yeah, your point remains. So thank you for that point.
Thank you.
Larry.
Hi, Martin. Thanks. Hey, just a real quick question regarding the 7A. So as I understand it from just what you said before, it sounds like Moda made a commitment to run the 7A more frequently. We built our plan based on their commitment, and now they're going to wait till December to fix it.
Yes, the 7A has it runs from the Pentagon all the way down to Van Dorn Metro with the new alignment. However, half of the trips turn back at Southern Towers. So in the Arlington section of the route, there's a lot more frequency, and they made that as one of their 12-minute routes that they've been advertising. But they neglected to realize that by doing that, they'd be taking us down to 24 minutes, which was less than what we talked about during peaks, and then it takes us down to 40-minute service during off peaks, which is the real problem. So when they made that decision to make it excuse me, I said 12 minutes. It's a 20-minute route because it operates every 20 minutes in Arlington. But yes, so the route that they have right now, which is too late to change, unfortunately, is every 40 minutes off peak, and we had expected to be 20 to 30 minutes. So the intent is that that they will change that in December. Unfortunately, it's too late to do anything about it at this time.
Okay, thanks. Just seems to me that a deal's a deal. 3 months is a long time to wait if you're somebody's affected by that.
Well, Martin, I took my inaugural trip today to come here, and I did not know the difference between the 30 and the 31 when I saw the bus come at Market Square and said, oh, it's a couple of minutes early. That must be because it's fare free. We don't have the idle time anymore. Well, little did I realize when the bus went out of King Street Metro and made a left instead of a right onto Duke Street, I realized I was on the wrong bus, and the driver very kindly let me out instead of making me go to the next stop, or else I would have certainly been late for coming to this meeting. So I will, that teaches me a lesson to be more attentive, but it is great, as you said, to see more service on the street. And I do appreciate the excellent job on the ride guide that I picked up as well. And, it's a great feeling when you pick up something and you feel like this has some weight to it because it's got a lot of pages to it, certainly more than our former ride guide. And you really do see, as you look at this and, our core routes, the robust level of service. And I also appreciate it. I just lost my page. The bride and groom, I don't know how well people can see this in here, look familiar to me. So I think you had a Dash employee who was a ringer there. This is advertising charter service, which now I'm learning we might not be able to use that ad anymore, depending on how our federal funding goes. But I did want to ask one question at the Old Town service. This is something I've brought up before. So with the Old Town Circulator now paralleling essentially the King Street Trolley, especially because we're only serving Market Square, they're essentially the same route between Market Square and King Street Metro. I've noticed today that there were a lot of people at the stops who didn't get on because the bus I happened to be on, because they were waiting for King Street Trolley. And I also noticed the driver didn't stop to kind of, and I don't know what you've done trained, didn't stop to kind of try to explain to them this would take them to the same place, which would have then increased the dwell time for the bus. So, if you're in a rush to get somewhere, there's kind of trade-offs there. But I do think that, especially as the 100 block of King Street is likely to remain permanently closed, and that alignment for the trolley is likely to become permanent unless we're going to move the trolley to side streets to cover the section by the waterfront, of rebranding or considering what is King Street Trolley versus Old Town Circulator and how we market those services, and maybe they don't need to be so separate anymore, and really thinking about how we can just encourage people to get on the first bus that comes. But I also understand the challenges that come with encouraging people to, stopping to try to explain that to people with an operator. And I don't know that that's necessarily their responsibility. So, just something I think we should pay attention to, especially on the weekends when we know the existing trolleys with only one door can become quite crowded anyway, and we may have some extra capacity on these other buses. And I think that also is incumbent on ACBA to consider, the Old Town Circulator as a part of their core service to bring people through the tourist corridors in the city. But I do want to commend you on the job in terms of getting this network rolled out and changing the signs in particular. I was out at Braddock Metro Sunday morning because I had to be in DC very early, and I actually saw the crew out there changing the signs, and I know they had already accomplished a great deal of them, and so very appreciative of that. And the last comment I have is really just an observation that, we have now consolidated a lot of bus stops because we have taken some of the buses off some of the side streets, like North Royal, for example, and Pendleton, where we no longer have Dash buses. So we have fewer Dash buses that remain, but particularly in the area between Braddock Road and King Street Metro, we have a tremendous number, and this is not necessarily a Dash responsibility, this is more a city comment. We have a lot of bus stops where they are still inaccessible because parking is permitted in front of those stops. And so people in a wheelchair, for example, or on crutches are not going to be able to board the bus directly from the sidewalk. And that to me has been an enormous issue. And I'm hoping that now that we have fewer stops to deal with, and the stops that we have are getting very high levels of service, that we can revisit beginning to design some of those stops to be more ADA accessible. Been a long time concern. I know there's been a lot of work done, particularly on Mount Vernon Avenue in recent years to improve Delray accessibility, but Old Town remains a challenge, and maybe that's just because of the issue of broaching taking away a few parking spaces. But I do hope that's something that we will continue to push the city to accomplish that, because if they really want to make the system work for everybody, it's necessary to ensure that every stop is accessible to our riders.
Thank you. Agree 100%.
And I think it's something we may, even want to put in, correspondence that we send to the city about priorities. And maybe that's something I will suggest that we put in our letter that we're going to do next month. All right, I know the hour is late. We have an executive session still to accomplish, but I do just want to congratulate. And yeah, you're right. This was an historic weekend for transit in Alexandria. And Martin, you must be breathing a huge sigh of relief to have seen this project through fruition from lines on a page. And I know it took a whole team effort and the entire organization to make this happen. We, as a board, are very, very proud of that and to be part of it. So we have our thanks, and we look forward to continuing to use the system. And at many more hours, we go more places. Awesome.
Mr. Chair, I would echo your comments and just also say the board, thank you for your comments and your feedback. You know, I think it's important for you to hear that although we might not be able to do anything immediately about your concerns, it's always important that we hear them and that you continue to bring them to us. Certainly, Patricia, the points you brought up are important and understood. Again, those were one of the trade-off elements, right, in this process. You know, maybe in time we can work in more resources to further lessen that trade-off. And Larry, to your point about WMATA, I mean, that's one of the frustrating things oftentimes about our industry. It can be very hard to make changes in very short notice. And when something like that happens, there is a whole system that has to go through before it's like turning an oil tanker, you know. So we'll continue to work with them on it, but your points are certainly noted as well.
Okay, I will go ahead and make the announcement before we go into executive session that our next board meeting will be, I may have supposed to do this after executive session, but there might still be people on the call who might want to know this at this point. The next regular meeting of the Alexandria Transit Company Board of Directors is scheduled for Wednesday, October 13th, 2021. Location and format to be determined based on guidance from the city. I will now ask if there is a motion to enter executive session. The language is on the screen.
Sure. Let me take a stab at this. I, Matt Harris, hereby move that the Alexandria Transit Company Board of Directors convene an executive session for the purpose of discussing legal and personnel matters pursuant to section 2.2-3711 paren A1 paren of the Code of Virginia.
Moved by Matt. We need a second.
Second.
Second by Ian. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. We're going to let staff now transition over to executive session. Josh will be staying with